Are you a corporate escapee and wasting valuable time attempting to figure challenges out on your own? Well, this podcast is for you. We bring you firsthand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day.
We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Hello and welcome to Corporate Escapees, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of people who are successfully running their own businesses, hearing their war stories and motivations for making the jump from their corporate gig. I'm your host, Paul Higgins, and our guest today is someone who traveled the world. And in a chance encounter, they met someone and talked about IT and thought, that sounds interesting, I'll go and do it. But then they realized that the industry wasn't supportive of them climbing the ladder whilst working part-time as a mum. So they thought they'll leave and start their own business. And they got some excellent advice from a mentor when they realized they weren't making money, switched to help women entrepreneurs online, and now the rest is blossoming. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Louise Brogan. Welcome, Louise Brogan from Social B to the Corporate Escapees podcast brought to you by Build, Live, Give. So, Louise, we're going to get to know lots about you today, but why don't we start with something that your family or friends would know about you that we wouldn't?
Hi, Paul. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast.
My pleasure.
Something that my friends and family know about me and my audience don't know is that when I was in my teenage years, my father was very enthusiastic about getting us involved in sport. And you wouldn't really think that to look at me now. But I swam for a local swimming club called Leander Amateur Swimming Club. And I trained 5 times a week. And I wasn't like, if you met me and I was in a swimming pool, you'd say, yeah, she's a pretty competent swimmer, but you would never think that I had swam for most of my teenage life. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights, Saturday mornings, Sunday after church, I went to swimming training. And you're talking about getting in a swimming pool up and down, up and down, up and down for the shortest session would be an hour. The longest session would be 2 hours.
Wow.
One benefit of that, Paul, was that I had my hair got kind of bleached by the chlorine. So I had fabulously gorgeous golden hair. And I don't swim at all anymore. It put me off swimming for life. I was allowed to stop when I turned 16 and I was doing my GCSE exams at school. So my dad let me stop training then. But I basically swam from the age of 10 to 16, 5 times a week.
Well, we've got something, in common because I was similar. For me, it was asthma. So, back in the days when you had asthma, it was like, the only way to fix it is to swim a lot. So I was forced to swim, and I think out of I suppose stubbornness, I refused to go in any competitions. But I was similar to you, probably not the amount of Ks that you did all the time, but certainly, yeah. And then I gave it up. That's great. And I suppose certainly this time of year there wouldn't be a lot of outdoor swimming anyway in Northern Ireland, I'm expecting.
Oh, no. Well, interestingly, there are people who do outdoor swimming here. Like wild swimming, and I have a membership community online, and one of the local members, Alison, goes swimming outdoors once a month in the sea, which I think is crazy. Must be freezing.
Yeah.
You turn blue.
Yeah, no, not for me. Not for me.
No,
and,
not for me either.
Yeah, and I know you've had a great career before you decided to leave and start your own business. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your corporate escapee story?
Sure. So going back to university, I did a degree in geography, which I loved, and I traveled a lot afterwards, which isn't really connected. You don't travel because you do geography. But while I was traveling, I met some people on a tiny little boat off the Gili Islands in Indonesia, and I think a lot of your Australian audience will know the Gili Islands, who talked about IT and a career in IT. This was back in 1997, I think. And this guy told me I said, what do you do in IT? And he explained, and I thought, that's something I think I could do. So I basically came back, did a master's in computing and information systems, and got a job as a software engineer for BT, which is the big telecoms company here in the UK.
Yes.
For 2.5 years, and didn't really love it. I loved IT. I loved doing software coding. But the job that I got, I ended up really doing not admin, but more of kind of project admin work rather than getting stuck into the coding in that role. And when I met my husband, I actually met him when we were doing the masters. We had both come back from traveling. He'd come back from spending time in America, and I had come back from spending time in Australia and Thailand. And we decided after 2.5 years of work that we'd like to go around the world again together. So I left that job. I did actually try to get a year off from the job, but they wouldn't give me it. So I left the job. And when I came back, I switched into working in IT project management for the National Health Service here. And I did that for 11 years. It was a brilliant job. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. It was much more my cup of tea than the software engineering position, because I was in charge of implementing big software projects. So it was very varied. I would do the project plan, report to the project board. I would implement the software. I would train staff. The health service does not have huge budget for these programs. So you kind of ended up doing a lot of the actual work yourself. And I would have had a small team of 2 or 3 people helping me. But I did a lot of hands-on work in that job. And I did that really happily for, I had my first child in 2005. So I did the job full-time for 4 years. But when I had my first daughter, I ended up going part-time. And so the last 7 years of that job, I was actually a part-time project manager.
Great. And then from when did you decide to actually leave?
So interesting story. And for any of the women who are listening to this podcast who have had children, they might come across this scenario as well. My role as a project manager was a really well-paid role. But after having my 3 kids, I was ready to go up the career ladder, but I was basically told in no uncertain terms that if I wanted to further my career in the health service, it would have to be on a full-time basis. And that wasn't something that I wanted to do. So I started looking around for something else to do. Actually, while I was on my first maternity leave with my first daughter, I started a business on the side, which was selling craft supplies, yes, which is nothing to do with what I do now. But I started an eBay shop, and then I got a website built, and I started selling craft supplies online. And I suppose that was my first real foray into online business. When I had my 3rd child in 2010, I really wanted out of the health service because I knew it had been made pretty clear to me that I wasn't going to get any further in that role unless I went full time. So I was looking for my way out, and I thought that the craft business was the way out. And I opened a local craft retail shop when my 3rd baby was 3 months old, which looking back now, I don't really know how I did it. So I had 3 kids who were baby, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I had a part-time job working in the health service as a project manager, and I had a craft shop. And I managed to juggle all of that for about 2 years. And my exit strategy, well, first of all, a business mentor came along to see me, Paul, when I was in the craft shop from my local council, yes, and she basically said, Louise, you're making no money in this business. I think if the business had been doing well, it would be a different story, but all the money I was earning was going to pay the staff that I had to hire to keep the business open while I was in my other job. I was working Saturdays and taking time away from my family. I just wasn't making enough money for it to be sustainable. And she said, you're kind of killing yourself here doing all of these things, and the business is making no money, but you seem to know what you're doing in terms of social media. Now, this was in 2013, when not a lot of people were really understanding how to use social media for small business. So she suggested that what I could do was actually help other businesses understand how to use Facebook. And I closed the shop within about 3 months of that conversation. And I worked in my health service job for another 2 years while building up social. So the business I started was Social Bee. And while I built up Social Bee on the side, I continued to work inside my health service job. So at this stage, I was then doing the social media management for other people, doing some training, one-to-one training, and working as a project manager and getting the kids. At this stage, they had started school and nursery school. So it was really intense, for people who are thinking about leaving their corporate job and doing what they call a side hustle. Mm-hmm. It means that you're working pretty much every night to build your business, because during the day you're in your job. So it was really hard work, really hard going, and I'm really glad to say that I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, look, I know even when I left corporate and I made a clean break, I was sort of, working ridiculous hours, longer than what I was at corporate, because everything was new, setting up accounts, setting up, all of the stuff that they don't tell you when you go to leave. Because, everyone always tells you the pretty stuff and the front end stuff. And it's like, hang on, even, the amount of red tape was ridiculous. So look, yes. I agree. But I'm glad you did it and did it well. And, when you look back now, was it harder or easier to make that final change into particularly the social media part?
Well, doing the social media part, it was like finding a glove that fits. It was perfect for me. And it was really a combination of all the things that I love doing in my health service job. I ended up working with my very first client was a local Pilates instructor called Lindsay. And she just said to me, Louise, I have no idea how to use any of this social media stuff. It's above and beyond me, and I've no interest in doing it. So I really enjoyed showing her how she could do it herself. So I managed her account for her for a while, set it up, and then showed her how to do it. And it's kind of like taking the skills that I learned from, in the health service, helping district nurses figure out how to use computer software. It was very similar and part of the job that I loved the most. So switching over to social media was actually, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed my job. But when it came to actually making the decision to leave my job, it was really a perfect storm of ingredients. I was in a project that I was really quite passionate about. It was about rolling out, and I think you might have this in Australia already, but whenever your district nurse or social work in the community comes out to see somebody in their home, we wanted to roll out a project that would give those staff access to patient records on a mobile device in the patient's home. Yes. So if I was sitting with your granny and your granny needed new bedding ordered or something, I could sit and order it there and then, rather than having to wait to go back to the office and sit and order 9 different patients, new prescriptions or new appointments or anything like that. I would have access to their records on the device in their home and be able to do it there and then. The problem was, and this is one of my frustrations in my job, was that the staff, there was huge resistance. They just didn't want to know. They didn't want to move forward with technology. And there's probably a combination of reasons why, but they dug their heels in and they just refused to play ball. And it was the most frustrating project I was part of. And my husband had one day, after a really frustrating meeting, so I was sitting in a meeting with 30 people, and they all agreed to try out what I was talking about. And we came out of the room and I heard the senior social worker just say to one of his colleagues, well, we're not doing that. He agreed in the room to do it, came out of the room, and he just wasn't going to do it. And I rang my husband and he said, well, Louise, you know what? You're too good for that place. It's time to move on. I had built up. Yeah, I at this stage, I've been working for 2 years, and every single penny I earned in the business, I kept in a bank account as my safety net for when I was ready to leave. And he just said, Louise, get your coat and get out of there. And that's the day I handed my notice in.
Brilliant. And do you think, going back to when you had the craft store, do you think if that mentor hadn't have, I suppose it's all hypothetical, but how long do you think you would have continued to run that business until you decided that wasn't the right fit for you?
A lot longer, because I just kept thinking, it's going to happen. It's going to change. It's all I need is the next big, something's going to change. I'm going to try something different, and it's going to work out. I think mentoring is really important in business.
It's so true. And, I think it's it's often so hard to diagnose your own challenges. And I think, that's why I always laugh. I saw Roger Federer on the TV tonight, and I think he's about the only, brilliant sports person that's never been, or he rarely has a coach. He, I suppose he's that good he doesn't need one. But I think, that ability to see it, and I think that's, I think in corporate, especially for a lot of people listening now, you were so good at corporate and you had such a great skill. But actually running at your own business, like you've learned and I've learned, it's a completely different thing. So you don't lose all your corporate skills, but you certainly got to gain ones. And I think if you can get a mentor to help expedite it, and I'm so pleased that that definitely happened for you. So that sort of takes us into the build part. So what do you do today? If someone says, Louise, what do you do today? How do you answer that?
Oh, that's easy. I help entrepreneurs to build their business online.
Great. And when people say, what do you mean by online, Louise, especially those resistors, what do you say there?
So basically what I do is I help small business owners and entrepreneurs and professionals actually as well to figure out how to grow and build their business or their presence online. It's all about raising your visibility online in order to get more clients and customers, or if you're in a career, how to get more visibility in your career through understanding all the different tools. So whether that's social media or blogging or email marketing or podcasting, I help people I like to think that I make the online world a lot more simple to understand than maybe some of the other people out there who, sometimes you look at, how do you do a webinar? How do you start a podcast? And you can be a bit baffled or yes, overcomplicating things. And I like to think that I explain things in a simple, straightforward way for my customers and clients.
Great. So, there's a lot of people listening right now that have left corporate, running their own business and are in that confused state. What's something that you know about social media that you've learnt that you think would benefit them?
I would say choose one platform and learn how to use that properly. So if your audience are on Facebook, get to understand how to use Facebook. If your audience are on LinkedIn, then get stuck into LinkedIn. Do not try and be on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, because you won't be able to do all of them really, really well. And if you're trying to do all of them really well, you're probably not spending enough time on actually working in your business.
And what's the best way to know what platform they're on? Because I know in some cases, people are on all of those platforms themselves. So how do you help people pick which is best for them?
Well, you need to start with understanding who you're actually trying to reach online. So it's really, you have to do a little bit of work about identifying who your ideal clients are. And when you know who your ideal clients are, it becomes much easier to find them online. So if your ideal client is maybe like a small professional firm of solicitors, you're going to find those people on LinkedIn. If your audience if you're selling coaching packages, or you are helping people start up a business, I would say those people are probably on Facebook. To be fair, Paul, 2 billion people around the world access Facebook every single month. So
yes,
it's rare that your audience aren't on Facebook, but when they're on Facebook, are they thinking in terms of business, or are they there just to catch up with their friends and family? This last year, I became a She Means Business accredited trainer for Facebook and Instagram. And one of the things that I went to London to the Facebook headquarters there, and one of the things they said that day really stuck with me is that people go to Facebook for building community or finding their community, and people go to Instagram for inspiration. So when you're thinking about the messaging you're putting out on Facebook, it's really about building a community around your business and customers and clients. And when you're sharing stuff on Instagram, you're inspiring people in there. You're sending out messages of inspiration to your audience.
Yeah, and have you seen any shift from Facebook to LinkedIn as an example over the last 12 months?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. One of the things that here in Northern Ireland, I don't think enough people are using LinkedIn, without a doubt. But I see shifts over in England to more people using LinkedIn and using it very differently. They're posting videos and they're not afraid to show personality. It's, some people that I meet locally who are not in the online business space at all. So say like my friend Colin, who went to university with me, and he works in a corporate job. And he's like, well, LinkedIn is just, where you for recruitment. And no, it's not at all. It's for really building your network and connections. And when I post stuff on LinkedIn, I generally tend to get messages asking for someone to come and work with me. And that's a big difference to post the stuff that I post on other social media platforms. So when someone is on LinkedIn, they're there with much more of a business mindset, I think. So if you're putting something on LinkedIn, people are already there with their work head on. Whereas when they're on Facebook, they're not on Facebook to find businesses. They're there because they want to connect with their cousin who lives, in another state, or, to see what their friends from school are doing.
Yeah, and look, and I really appreciate the change that Facebook made, because they made it easier for me. Like I certainly go to Facebook not as frequently as I used to, but I do that more for personal. But yeah, LinkedIn now, from a B2B perspective, yes. I think the growth is particularly I've found here in Australia and also the US in particular is really skyrocketed. So I just hope it doesn't get too much noise, which I'm sure it will, and then I'll sort of correct it and put in some algorithm rules, etc. But what are some couple of key tips you'd love to give for people that are using LinkedIn for B2B?
If you are on LinkedIn, make sure that you have optimized your profile, by which I mean simple steps. Make sure that you have a photograph, a head and shoulders shot of you, not a photograph from your holidays or out in a pub or at a wedding. Just a plain, simple head and shoulders picture of yourself. Don't wear sunglasses.
Yes.
And then fill in as much of your profile as you can. So what it is that you do and who you do it for will be in your summary. Fill in your education, because you'll connect with people. Will be looking for people who went to their university or college to connect with. If your organization or company that you work for, so if you're still in corporate, if they have a LinkedIn page, connect yourself to that page, post regularly. And also one huge tip is when you're on LinkedIn and you're reading other people's posts, comment on them, because there's two things here. A lot of people are going to LinkedIn and are just browsing through and they're clicking like. You're not raising your own profile by doing that. If you have filled in your profile properly and you have your little summary of what it is that you do in your headline. So I think mine says Louise Brogan, helping entrepreneurs with online marketing. I can't remember exactly because obviously I'm not looking at it right now.
Yeah, helping businesses and professionals raise their visibility online. There you go.
There we go. So Paul, if you put a post on LinkedIn and I commented on it and somebody else saw my comment, they would see Louise Brogan and that headline underneath. So if you don't have a good headline, so if I just had Louise Brogan, business consultant, people aren't really going to be interested enough to click through, but my headline will attract my audience's attention, and they're more likely to click on that and go off and look at my profile. So by commenting on other people's posts on LinkedIn, you're actually raising your own visibility in front of that other person's network, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. That's a great point. Makes perfect sense. And for you, where would you like your business to be in 3 years' time?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. This last year, in 2018, I started my membership site and I started my first mastermind. And in 3 years' time, I would like to have grown the membership and I would like to be running multiple masterminds for entrepreneurs.
Brilliant. Great. And in those masterminds, who's sort of your ideal client for those masterminds? Have you got a mix across your three that you spoke of before, or you got a particular focus?
It is definitely a focus. It is women entrepreneurs. They are, I would say, they're over 35. They are established with their own business, as in they're at least 1 year in business, and they're looking for accountability and goal setting and support from other women who have also got their own businesses.
Brilliant, great. And And in that mastermind, so the one that you're currently running, what's unique about what you do in your mastermind versus maybe some other masterminds? I know it's hard to compare them because you don't know those, but what about what do you do that you see as unique?
I think that one of the things I do is I start every single week with a win for every person in the mastermind. So I go around all of the group, and these are held online on Zoom. So everybody has got something positive that has happened in their business in the last week. And sometimes somebody comes along and they say, well, I'm feeling a bit flat today. It's not really going very well. And I will dig a little deeper and help them find something so that it's very positive and very encouraging. So everyone starts with a win. I record every week on a Google spreadsheet and what the wins are, what the people have done that week, and what they really want help with going forward. So you can look back through the sheets and see how far you've come. And then every member has a 10-minute hot seat, which I know most masterminds do. But everyone gets a chance to come into the group and ask a question, and then everybody else feeds into that. And I think one of the things that I do is that I make sure that everybody gets to speak. So if there's somebody who's maybe not really contributed to the question that the person's asked, I'll say, well, Sarah, what do you think about that? And really get people involved in it as well. So I think I'm a good facilitator as well as a chief encourager for my mastermind members.
Great. And I can't believe that someone in Northern Ireland wouldn't be positive and say a win. That just doesn't seem like the Irish for me. But
well, my mastermind's not. There's two people from Northern Ireland in it, Paul. We had a lady from Darwin.
Oh, well, there you go.
And the other members are English.
Well, there you go. There you go. And it's good. It's good. I've got a mastermind as well that people across the world, and I just love the fact that you can be on Zoom and you can have brilliant conversations, and you're in your pajamas or PJs or whatever they are at home. It's fantastic. Yeah. So what are some of the steps that you've done to improve your profitability of your business? I know that in the craft shop, that was one of the key reasons that you made the shift after people gave you the feedback. What are the key things you've done to improve the profitability in the social B business?
Well, I stopped doing social media management for other people because it's actually really, really hard to do that for other people because, well, for me, it's like pulling teeth. Once a client will sign up for you and they feed you information about what they're doing, but then it dries up and suddenly you're having to scrabble around and think, well, what we're going to post this month for this client. And I find that was for the amount of money that you could charge for that reasonably, it just wasn't a great revenue stream in my business. So I closed down that revenue stream and I focused more on things that are paying better, but also things that I really enjoy. Like I really love doing the group coaching calls for the membership, and I love doing the mastermind. But I've increased my prices, and I think that sometimes women, particularly in business, are a bit worried about what they charge. And I've just thought, actually, I met John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneurs on Fire. I met him and Kate Erickson in Dublin last summer.
Yes.
And he said to me, brilliant at giving advice, actually, great fella. And he said to me, Louise, when I was first starting out and I found a coach, and she told me the price, and he says, I did a real double take. And she said to me, John, would you like to earn this money, every month from somebody, working with you? And he said, well, yeah. And she says, well, if you want somebody to invest that money with you, then you have to be prepared to invest it in yourself. And I thought that's such a great way of looking at things. I can't charge. So I at the minute, as we're recording this, I charge £500 for four sessions to work one-to-one with somebody to help them really iron out an issue that they're having in their business, or set something in motion for building their business online. And if I wasn't prepared to pay that myself for somebody, then why would somebody pay me it? That's kind of a way of looking at your pricing that I thought that was a really great tip from John, I thought. Yeah,
that's great advice. And a shout out to both John and Kate. I've met them in Australia, and Kate's actually been a past guest as well on Corporate Escapees podcast. So I'll put the links to her podcast in the show notes as well. So that's great. I think, wise words. And I think that pricing, I think you're right. Obviously I can't speak because I'm not a woman, but definitely for all of the clients that we have, men and women, pricing is their number one thing. And I think for people listening, it's really simple just to give it a go. Like I'm sure you would have done the same. You just, the next person you go to, you just, double it or, put it up by 20%, whatever it is. And you'll be amazed when they don't say, oh, that's too expensive, then it's fine. And then you just keep going on. And if they do and it doesn't work, well, then you can always go back. So I think, it's not as if it's like when I worked at Coca-Cola that everyone knew the price of Coke around the world.
Yes.
For your products, it's very special, and people should be working on value, not price. But I think that's a great tip. So as far as your team, who's in your team, who supports you in your social bee business?
So I have an accountant. I have so everybody that does work for me are all freelance. So I have a couple of different virtual assistants that I work with, and that's for different things. So there's a lovely girl called Pamela, and she's local to me, and she has been brilliant at booking local workshops for me. So she's very specifically offline assistance.
Yes.
I have another assistant who will do more like digital image creation for the business. And I'm like tomorrow night, I'm running an event here in Belfast for 40 women entrepreneurs. And I have a fantastic student called Eve, who I can just call her up and say, Eve, I'm running an event. I'd like you to come along and help me. And she's very hands-on. She's great at organizing. So it's different people that I kind of call in at different times.
Great. And what's been some of the hardest people to find? Who have you found the hardest?
Finding, it's very interesting. Finding somebody who understands the online business space, who I can ask for help with. So, for example, Pamela is fantastic, wonderful organizer. She used to be an executive assistant to somebody, a CEO here in Belfast before she set up her business. But when I asked her for help with, for example, organizing my podcast guests and podcast bookings, it was, it would take far too long to explain to her what exactly I meant. And I just thought I'd be better off doing it myself. So that has been a challenge, definitely. And I had outsourced some writing a couple of years ago in my business. And I just found that didn't really work for me. It's better for me to write my own blog posts than it is for me to pay somebody else to write them. Mm-hmm. And then what I was doing is getting somebody else to write them and then maybe editing them into my own words. And actually now I've just realized it's just easier for me to write it myself.
Yeah, no, great tips. And what are some of the key challenges that you face at the moment?
Well, interestingly, I've just started I've just joined a group coaching program, and the leader of that has said to me that her very words were, "I see you popcorning all over the place, Louise. We need to focus." So I have, I really want to focus down on the membership and the masterminds, but I also run local workshops of my own. I do corporate workshops for clients here. I have networking events. I have my podcast. I have my one-to-ones. And really this year, I want to really drill down into focusing and not bringing on any more revenue streams. Because I think, Paul, it's really tempting to think, I could do that. Let's add that to my business. But then you're just diluting all the other things that you're doing. So really trying to focus down more on building my own business. So while the workshops that I've been doing for other organizations are a great revenue stream, what I'd ideally like to do is build up my own audience and my own work. Like the workshops that I'm running, I started running my own workshops here in Northern Ireland towards the end of last year. And actually, they're a really excellent revenue stream for me. So my plan this year is to do one a month at least. Because I'm charging, coming back to the pricing question, I'm charging what I'm worth for those now. And it's simple for me to do because it's really my bread and butter. I'm teaching people how to use Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn at those events, but I'm getting a lot more revenue from it than if I was hired to go and do it for somebody else's organization.
Yeah, look, I agree. Time's the biggest asset that you have as a small business owner. I think, making those priority decisions in corporate, a lot of the times, they're made for you. So it actually, in effect, becomes easier. Whereas running your own business, the world's your oyster. You've got so much choice. That I think that focus, and I know I interviewed someone this morning that said, they've just got one focus only for the year, their key focus. So it might be launching a book or whatever. And my grandfather, who was actually, his family's from Ireland, and he used to have a great saying of, we want to chase deep wells rather than muddy puddles. And I'll always remember that as a kid. And that was sort of, the analogy of that focus, get to that clear water. Don't constantly be in these muddy puddles.
I think I'm going to write that on my wall.
It's one. I can see his face right now.
That's a brilliant quote.
Yeah. Now, before we go into the next section, I'd like to mention our YouTube channel called Build, Live, Give, where you get tips to help corporate escapees, just like Louise, to rapidly grow their business. So go and look at the great content, subscribe, and if you know other corporate escapees, just like Louise and I, please share it with them. So the next section is the Live section. So what are some daily habits that you do, Louise, to help you be successful?
So getting up early. I actually learned this from Kate Erickson. Kate was on my podcast in the early days as well, the Social Bee podcast. And she had recommended this to me. So I now get up now that my daughter is at what we call big school, she gets up early too. But I used to get up an hour before the family and really set myself up for the day. And it makes such a huge difference. We're just coming out of the Christmas period here. Well, I'm not sure when we're going live with this, Paul, but over Christmas for 2 weeks, there was no alarm set. Everybody slept in to 8:30 or 9 o'clock, which for a household that normally gets up at 6:30, it's been really hard to get back into. But this morning I woke up before my alarm at 6:15 and I came downstairs, and I like to do a bit of maybe yoga or a bit of kettlebells in the morning, just for 10-15 minutes, and fire off a few emails before the rest of the house gets up. And it really sets me up for the day.
Yeah, that's great. Some quality me time. I think that's brilliant. And your partner, so is it Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yep. So when he's listening to this, or he's listening right now, what would you like to say to him about the support he's given you through this journey?
Oh, he's been an amazing support to me. He's always encouraging me. We have 3 kids, 13, 11 and 8. And, I have to go, I travel a little bit, maybe to London for conferences. I'm going down to Facebook in Dublin in a couple of weeks' time. And it's not a matter of, I just say to him, look, I really want to go to this event. He says, absolutely, go for it. You go for it. You're doing great things in business. And he's so supportive. And I know, I went to the Youpreneur conference in London in November 2018. And, I came back. It took me 3 days to get the house back to rights, if you like. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for both of us. We have 3 kids. We've a dog. We have a busy household. And weekends we've got rugby and hockey and band for the kids.
Any
it's
swimming?
Constantly on the go. Well, no swimming.
No swimming.
So to have that support is so invaluable. And my husband works he's a business analyst for a big white collar company. And it's really funny because he was talking this morning about something to do with one of his projects, like a global project. And he just said to me, "You're not really listening to me, are you?" I said, "No, I am, I promise." But if I talked about what I'm doing in my business too much, he'd be like, "I don't really know what you're talking about anymore, but go for it. You're doing really well." But he does say, "So when am I retiring, Louise? Because I've got so many big dreams for this business." He's like, "When? That's great. When am I retiring?"
We'll retire and travel the world again.
Yes,
you have
definitely.
to bookend it. Yeah, and look, the next section's the give section. So what's a community or a cause that you support and why?
So I am really passionate about women starting businesses and getting support to run a business. I probably because of my own backstory, women who have families and don't want to be working 9 to 5 and having kids in childcare. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm reading Michelle Obama's Becoming book at the minute, and she said, her ideal life, or what worked for her, was having her kids minded by somebody in the afternoon so she could work 9 to 5, and that worked for her. And for me, I wanted to be at home when the kids got home from school. So I'm really passionate about supporting other women in business. And so last year, I became one of the Facebook She Means Business accredited trainers. But part of that is that I host a local networking event here in Northern Ireland for women. And it's just a really nice, it's a 2 hours on a Friday morning where you come along and just really talk about what's going on in your business. And it's like a nice, safe space to talk about any worries or concerns, as well as ask me about Facebook and Instagram. I mean, that's the point of it. But it's just a really nice network. And I'm just really passionate about giving other women a hand up to start and grow their business as well. It's a real passion of mine.
Well, the last section is the action section. So I'll just ask you some questions and get some rapid fire responses. So the first one is, what are your top 3 productivity tips?
Try not to spend all day on social media. Have a timer. So time yourself. There's a thing called the Pomodoro app that I've downloaded onto my laptop, and it works in 30-minute sections. So trying to be organized and stick to 30 minutes on catching up on your social media, and then turn it off. Okay. Don't have your emails open all the time. So turn off the notifications on your emails, because if you run your business based on how your inbox looks, your emails are driving what's happening next in your business rather than you driving what's happening next in your business. So I think try and avoid your inbox, maybe check it like a certain number of times a day. But that's it. Don't just keep going to your inbox as soon as you get another email. And the third thing is to batch your work. So this is something I'm determined to do in 2019. So when I'm going to batch record my podcasts, for example. So I'm going to pick like one Monday a month and block book in podcast recordings for that one day, so that I'm not, if you're doing podcasts on the Monday and then the Wednesday and then the Thursday the following week, it's all over the place. So if you can actually sit down and say, right, I've got 5 hours, I'm going to record 4 episodes of the podcast, and that's this month's podcasting done. It makes you far more productive if you can actually manage to batch your work.
Great advice. And what are some of the favorite apps or something on software that you use to help you be productive?
So I use, I like Trello. I do like Trello for organizing myself. And if you haven't seen Trello, it's a piece of software. It's kind of like you have boards. So for example, I'll have a board that's sort of my podcast. And on that board, I have little lists. And I have a list of people I want to contact and book for the podcast. Then I have a list of people that I've got booked in. Then I've got a list of people I've recorded, and then a list of people ready to go live. And literally, for example, I interviewed a lady called Catherine last week, and Catherine was moved from the booked to the recorded list. So it's a really great app for just looking at and seeing where you are and what you need to do next. So I really like that piece of software. And it's also an app on your phone as well. I do love Instagram stories. And I think that's going to be a huge social media app that people are really going to get stuck into this year. It's a fantastic way of connecting with people from all over the world by responding to their stories and getting in front of their radar. I'd love for your audience to come and follow me on there and find out what I'm doing. And my Instagram is Louise Brogan _. But again, you don't want to be getting sucked into the tunnel of spending all day on there. So try and limit your time. Maybe check it like once in the morning and once in the afternoon. But I really like using Instagram stories. So Trello and Instagram stories for me for the moment.
Brilliant. And what about some podcasts that you love to listen to other than the Social Bee podcast that we'll put the links into?
I love listening to, my favorite podcast is the BizChix podcast with Natalie Ekdahl. Natalie is based out of California and she runs masterminds and group coaching programs and is really very inspirational for me. She also runs a live event every year over in California at the time, determined to get to 1 year. So I really love listening to her. Also here in the UK, Janet Murray does the Janet Murray Show. And she's really, a lot of the podcasts I listen to are about online business. I don't really listen to podcasts that aren't business related. I really enjoyed Kate's Take podcast with Kate Erickson. She finished that there in September, October. But if you go back and listen to any of her episodes, so much value in terms of organizing yourself and organizing your business and productivity. So that'd be the top 3 I'd recommend just now.
Brilliant. And what's some parting advice you'd love to leave us corporate escapees?
What I did was set up my business and build it before I left the safety net of my job. And I know that's because I am risk averse. But people who say just quit your job and then build something, they must have a big bank account. So I am definitely focus on building something on the side before you leave your job. But when it comes to it, find a group or a mentor who can support you and you can turn to. You don't have to be on your own. I have a brilliant Facebook group called the Social Beehive. And I posted in that the other day and said, just because we work as solo entrepreneurs does not mean we're on our own. Reach out and find a community, whether it is a local networking event or a Facebook group online. Don't struggle through the trials and tribulations of building your own business on your own. There's always somebody you can reach out to.
Brilliant. Well, some great advice. And you can find more about Louise at socialbni.com. And we'll have the links to that and also all the other great information that Louise has given on the podcast. But it's awesome having you on today, Louise. And can't wait to keep in contact.
Thanks, Paul. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I've really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks, Louise.
Bye.
That was a great interview with Louise. The top 3 takeouts for me was 1 is comment on LinkedIn posts, other people's LinkedIn posts, so people see your headline and get to know you. I think that's great advice rather than just liking it. The second is get yourself a mentor. I know Louise showed some great examples in this podcast of doing that, and I highly recommend that. And the third thing is raise your prices. As we said in the podcast, even do it for the next customer and just test it, but please raise your prices because most people are undercharging. I'd love to hear what you got from this podcast, so email me at paul@buildlivegive.com, and also please share this with other corporate escapees so they can get benefit to have both a great lifestyle and also financial freedom.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening and be brave.